Okay, my second lesson, mate. Let's get into it. Let's talk about it a little bit. Um, yeah, I think I've just spent a few minutes looking at your swing again, and I think we can narrow what we want to try and do down into a couple of moves. All right. So, last lesson we spoke about the fact that you're coming through and the toes turning over too early through impact. Right. So, kind of through the shot. It's very flippy through the shot. All right, so that right hand kind of takes over a little bit here. Right, you're kind of flipping it. Toe turns over a little bit too much, so you can see how that right hand has really kind of dominated your left hand in that position. Okay, really flipped over with your right hand. Actually, through as you go a bit further, if you look at your hands here, you can actually see a little bit of space there between your two wrists. Okay, so lots of flip, and obviously the club face is going to turn over in the process. The toe is going to turn over as well. So just a bit too much club face rotation through the shot. All right, so if we and we'll look at the down the line view in a second. All right, now when you take it away, it's a little bit kind of the club head is doing a little bit too much in the takeaway, isn't it? It's kind of, yes, we want the club head to be moving first, but for me, there's just a little bit too much whipping inside with the club head there. Does that make sense? Like this club head is moving way too much in conjunction with what your hands are moving. All right, so I would prefer you to try and keep your left arm and the club a little bit more together in the takeaway. So you can see how kind of, as your right arm starts to fold, the club head starts to get a little higher. All right, but then and this is Mako Grady on the left side, by the way. All right, so like I said, I think I've nailed it down into a couple of moves. So I love the way that you get up to the top. Hands are still a bit too high. We'll talk about that in a second. That's just getting your hands moving more on the inside in the takeaway. But then as we come down, great transition, right? You really load up the lag in your hands. You store that lag very well all the way down. So producing the lag isn't a problem, okay? So producing the power in your golf shots isn't the problem, right? The problem is controlling the curve at a guess, okay? So lag's very good. You're left-sided. You produce the lag. You sustain the lag all the way down, all right? But it's just too flicky down the bottom. So what I want you to pay attention to is, yes, like we said last time, with regards to stopping this club head rotating too much. All right, if you look at that position with your left arm and the club, and you look at Mako Grady in that position, right, you can see how all his left arm and the club are all pretty much still in one line, okay? Whereas you've kind of flicked the club head up here, and now your club head is around here somewhere, right? So just too much flick with that right hand. So if you look at what your left leg is doing, okay, and you look at what you do in the transition there, you definitely sit into your left leg a little bit there. But then what I'm noticing is it's starting to straighten and it's starting to pull up a little bit too soon. So you look at where you are there. Well, let's see, sit into it there, right? So let's say you sit into your left leg there. But then from that position, it looks like you're trying to straighten it up too much. All right. So as you start to straighten it up there, and you look at your legs there, right, it looks like this leg's very straight, this leg's very straight. Whereas you look at Mako Grady through the shot, right, and we'll look at it from the whole of the downswing. So lags it just like you, lags it very well, sustains the lag very well. But number one, look how much his left knee is out in front of him, right? And look how much he maintains that bend in his left leg. There, all the way down through impact. And it's only kind of just post-impact that his legs are going to start to straighten about now. right about now, right? Whereas your legs are kind of straightening a bit too much, and then I think that is going to result in you flipping your hands over as well. Whereas if you sit into it a little bit more, like you see Mac do here, then I think you'll be able to control your hands a little bit easier, make those hands a little bit more passive through the shot that way. All right. So that's what I want you to do with your lower body coming down. I want you to try and sit into it. And it's almost like you're hitting it. You're going to be feeling as though you're hitting it with your left leg still bent. All right, still as though you're sitting into it with your left leg. So, you know, great sort of, and this Mac's a great model here. You know, you look at that position, right? Left knee's out in front of him. Left knee's out in front of his hip. It's out in front of his heel. And just try and get used to hitting shots in that position. Right? I think that's really going to help you sit into it and be a little bit more passive through the shot with your hands. All right, rather than obviously this right hand flick over and the club end up over here somewhere. All right, so a lot more passive in the hands. All right. Try and control it with your left wrist, not your right wrist. All right, so like we talked about last time, here we want to feel as though the left wrist is bowing, right? Whereas you're letting your right wrist flick over, and that's why the club ends up over here somewhere, right? In this position, your left arm and the club should all be in one line, just like you see there. Okay, whereas you flicked it over with your right wrist, and therefore the toe turns over, and then you're always going to tend to have that miss to the left. All right, power's not a problem. All right, so I think a great exercise for you would be to kind of practice just hitting 50% shots. You know, so let's say you hit a 7-iron 170, 180, right? Well, try and hit a 7-iron 100 yards with a full swing. I think that will really help you. All right, and just practice working on sitting into it and keeping some bend in your left knee, and then controlling what your hands are doing a little bit more through the shot. All right, you know, to guard against this, and you know, there, if we zoom in a little bit, just a little bit, sort of there, you can just about make out that your left wrist, whoops, you can just about make out that your left wrist is slightly bent like that way. So we want the opposite. If your left hand's here, if your left arm's here, we want your left wrist going this way, bowing it, right? Not flicking it, not bending it. All right. So I think your right hand and your right wrist are overpowering your left wrist. So let's try and work on sitting into it and controlling what's going on through impact more with your left wrist, right? Turning your left wrist down and bowing it through the shot. Okay, and that's your kind of your anti bending of your left wrist. All right, that's just going to cause the club face to turn over too much. So let's look at your other one here, and I'll pull up. I'll tell you who's a great model for this. Hunter Mayhem. Right, great model. Right, so I want you to watch where his hands go. Right, so if we stop him there, right, you can see how his left arm now is more inside of his left shoulder, right? So in the takeaway, his hands have moved inward compared to his toe line, all right? And the more he kind of lets this right arm fold, the more this club head will raise up. Alright, so that keeps your club head outside your hands. Whereas at the moment, if we stop you there, you can see, and the camera angle's not great. The camera angle's kind of down the target line. There's your toe line. So next time, just get the camera angle right in between the target line here, where your ball's going to go, and your toe line. Alright, so I want the camera angle maybe there, right in the middle, that yellow line, right in between your toe line and the target line. Okay, and that will pick it up a little bit easier. But you can see here how your left arm is kind of straight down below your left shoulder, right? And the club head's still low. So the club head's going to be a little bit inside your hands. All this is going to do as well, Mike, is if your hands aren't moving inward enough, right, and you're kind of coming slightly outside the line this way with your hands, right, you're not going to have enough connection underneath your left arm, right? So therefore, without that connection under your left arm, you can get your hands very high, right? It's also across the line. Look, if you look at where Hunter gets it to, right? So it's outside of his hands there because his left arm has come more inward, right? Hands have come more inward, and then folds his right arm, gets up to the top, and then it's perfectly sort of parallel with his target line. Well, if that's where you're trying to hit it, you can see your club at the top is pointing right over here to the right somewhere. So you have to get it back on plane, you have to drop the club head, right? You have to drop it down, and you've kind of taught yourself to do that very well to get it back on plane, and that's one of your best. That's probably your best move in your swing, right? That how you kind of you load the lag up the top, and you kind of sustain it all the way down. That's your best move without question, right? But I just want to get it a bit more on plane. So I want your hands coming back on the inside, so that when you get up at the top here, you haven't got two planes. And this is what the two plane swing means, right? Two planes is you got a plane up there with your arms, and you got a plane there with your shoulders. That's two planes. Whereas you look at modern golf swing, you look at most of the tour pros now, the left arm matches their shoulder plane at the top. That's a one plane swing. Two plane swing, your hands are very high. Don't forget, this is him hitting it looks like a 3-wood. So if we draw a line there, his hands are just above his head. I mean, you've got what? Maybe 6 iron, 5 iron, 7 iron. Look how high your hands are, right? So that's a two-plane swing when your arms don't match up with your shoulders. All right. So I just want to get you on one plane, right? And that's why I'm saying get your hands more inward, so that at the top your arms will be more over here, which match up with your shoulders. All right, bud. So I think if we focus on those two little things, right? If we narrow that what I've just spoken about down to two things. Number one, hands have got to come more inward, right, in your takeaway. And number two, let me pull your other swing up here. Number two, I want you sitting into the shot more on your downswing. So hands more inward going back, and then I want you sitting into the shot more here with a bent left leg through impact. So you can see how through the shot it's kind of already straight. You've snapped that left leg back, right? And then you get very flicky with your hands. So the whole idea of sitting into it more would be to try and take some of this flick out, try and take some of this right hand flick out of it. All right, trying to just come down and bow your left hand through the shot. So don't forget, bowing means that's your left arm, and you're bowing your left hand this way, right, instead of letting your left wrist bend that way. All right. So two things: hands inward, and then sit into it through the shot, and then that'll take some of the club face rotation out of it through the shot. So, like I said, distance isn't a problem. All right, hitting the ground in the same spot isn't a problem, right? You're a good player, but what we do need to control is the curvature on the ball, which is obviously dictated by how much the club face is rotating through the shot. All right, and that in turn is dictated by this left wrist. All right, so if you can control the left wrist, you can control the club face. At the moment, your right hand is overpowering your left wrist, therefore turning the toe over, right? And you can look at it from this angle, right? So still there, you can see how much the toe is turned over in this position, right? You look at a model. What have we got? Rocky. Oops. Right, so if you look at your club face there, how it's kind of turned over a little bit, right? Here, club face is turned over compared to your shaft. And you look at a pro, right? You look at his club face here. Well, if anything, the club face is more open to the shaft rather than closed to the shaft. Does that make sense? And by sitting into a little bit more through impact, what you'll tend to find when the club comes out through this position, right? And also the club will come out lower underneath your left shoulder as well. The club face will be more here rather than turning over. All right, Mike. So I hope that helps. Like I say, you can narrow it down to a couple of key sort of trigger, and you can kind of, when you're practicing, use these triggers in your swing rehearsal. That'll really help. Swing inward with your hands going back, and then sit into it with your left leg. All right, bud. Any questions? Please use the message center below, and I'll speak to you soon.